What is the strangest thing you've seen someone do on public transport? We were riding the DART rail in Dallas to the State Fair of Texas. There was a methed out crazy guy on there that kept staring at my 1-year-old son and repeating, in a low, creepy voice, "He will not take you, but he will take the child. He will not take you, but he will take the child." Needless to say, we were not happy. We just wanted funnel cakes, not threats of demonic kidnapping. He was just mad you were taking the kid to the fair and not him. Saw a guy sitting in front of me on a double-decker bus masturbate. He wasn't even trying to hide, just straight up jerking it there and then. I have nightmares where I'm that guy, like I'm mid-wank and realize I'm in public. Giant homeless woman started to bathe herself on the F train. She stripped down on a moderately full car and used 2-gallon jugs of spring water and a roll of paper towels. Little rivulets of homeless lady funk streaked across the floor as everyone raised their feet, wishing the train would come to a stop quickly. Everyone raised their feet, wishing the train would come to a stop quickly. Oh yes, I'm visualizing this. I've found there's usually a point where the behavior stench of a homeless person goes from everyone staring at their phones ignoring them to actively pushing their way into the next car. This would have been my point. A woman on the London tube brought 3 live ducks in harnesses onto the carriage. They were just stood there chilling and quacking away. This screams Piccadilly line. I was taking a train at night and some guy was standing with his back against the nearest door, scissors in both hands, and just snipped at air. Lazy Edward Scissorhands cosplay. I stayed in Istanbul for a month. During that time, I came to the conclusion that some women lean back to back to avoid harassment. My first encounter was very weird though. It was very crowded and there were only 2 other girls there. Without saying anything, they wiggled their way to me and both leaned their back on my back. Not gonna lie, I was quite spooked. Haven't experienced it anywhere else. Since there were 2 of them, they could have just leaned against each other, which means they saw you alone and decided to help, which is nice. A guy was standing next to me with a model train, modeled after the V-Line trains in Victoria, Australia, that he just bought. He proceeded to strike up a conversation with me, telling me about how he was bitten by a dog, sued the owner, and used the money he got to buy the model. He even showed me both the bite wound and took the model out of its box to show me. A strange experience, but also quite interesting. I once saw an elderly guy pushing an old man in a wheelchair in the underground. The man in the wheelchair wore sunglasses, not a sunny day, and had staring eyes behind them. He also had his feet crossed in a way no old man would have. His hands were really pale and folded on his lap. I could not see him breathing. But the strangest thing was that the elderly man was holding the old man's head the whole time. Not gently, but really holding it with his 2 hands as if it would fall off. I still don't know if he was dead, a puppet, or really sick, but it was somehow really scary. I saw an elderly lady pull out a can of Lysol, spray her armpits, then lift up her skirt and spray it between her legs. No reaction or acknowledgement for what she just did. I moved to the next car. I saw a man take his shoes off and clip his nails on the train. Left his nasty nails all over the seat and floor once he got out. There is a special place in heck for people who leave their toenails lying around. 2 guys get on the same train carriage as me. I'm sitting behind them. It's mid-morning and the train is quite full on this Western Sydney line. Nonchalantly they pull out a kit consisting of syringes and spoon and cook up right there and then. They have their hit and then proceed to each spark up a smoke and not even acknowledge the other passengers. Someone must have called the police because a couple of stops later the cops met the train and come and pulled the guys off. Fellow Westie here, this is sobering but unsurprising : in Melbourne, I've seen a lot of people chroming on the train. Upfield line, represent, which is where people inhale paint cans or petrol, usually from a plastic or paper bag. One day on my way to uni, I saw the guy inhaling from a paper bag. Oh, another chroming dude. Awesome. I dismissively thought to myself. Suddenly he pulls a sandwich out of the bag and begins eating it, then throws the bag away. Mother was just inhaling his sandwich. I love how a guy just pre-tasting his sandwich is considered weirder than people huffing paint. I saw a young woman get on early mid-20s, obliterated on drugs. She sat far back behind me so I didn't hear anything. And the next thing I know, some musclehead is yelling for the bus driver to stop the bus and was manhandling an old mid-50s guy off the bus. Musclehead started yelling, "Get this creep off the bus. He's back there kissing a passed out girl." Although in 10 years taking the bus, this is the most I've ever witnessed happen, so the bus is genuinely a safe place to be. Little did you know his biggest muscle was actually his heart. The 903 bus line in Melbourne is notorious for having weird crap happen on it, and I'm unfortunate enough to have to take it to school and work multiple times a week. One time a mama junkie and a papa junkie and their 2 little tween junkies boarded the bus, all completely shirtless. They proceeded to vandalize almost every seat on the bus while one of the tweens burnt his leg purposely with a lighter. Another time a bloke asked me for spare change and I gave him a $5 note. He sang me along about beautiful blue eyes. I have brown eyes. On a more wholesome note, a tiny little man who didn't speak English drew a portrait of me one time, which was nice. I think the last 2 are both wholesome. Dude across from me takes everything out of his backpack while kind of muttering to himself. I figure he's looking for something. He then proceeds to put the backpack on his head. Guess he needed to take a closer look. That last line sounded like a dad joke and it made me chuckle. I was on a sleeper train going from Hamburg to Rotterdam and woke up in the middle of the night to a 60-ish-year-old German lady violently masturbating on the bunk opposite while staring into my very soul. I just pretended to go back to sleep. I wasn't asleep. She knew. Bonus. In the morning when we arrived and were leaving the train, she winked at me. I think she liked you. I saw a guy, about 15 years old, chubby and always wearing a light blue t-shirt, entering a bus line I was taking a few years ago, actually several times. When the bus stopped and the driver opened the door, he just stood there with his little suitcase, staring at me or another passenger and said, "Take my suitcase in." "No please, no, can you just a straight order." I thought that he had some kind of disability and that he couldn't carry heavy objects, but once I grabbed his suitcase it was pretty light and, as I said, he was not looking like a weak guy. I expect everyone to be able to do this on his or her own. This happened several times and I have no explanation why this guy always had his little suitcase with him and why he always wanted others to carry it for basically 1 foot, and also why he was behaving this strangely. Kinda late, but it would have to be DDLG roleplay. Both were mid-30s and heavy set, dressed like middle school weebs, and the lady even had a pacifier. She kept asking her daddy repeatedly, baby voice and all, if they were at the park yet. That's not even the worst part of it. She would give her pacifier to her partner and he'd slob on it, heavily, and put it back in her mouth for her, and she would make this weird crooning noise. I'm shivering already just remembering. In Sydney, these twin brothers got on my bus. They were clearly homeless and pee out of their brains. They both looked like Bob Ross. So one stood at one end of the bus and the other one at the other side, both screaming. He frickin' ran like a rattlesnake in sync for a good 20 minutes. Public transport at its best. I missed the part where you said they were pee out of their brains and honestly thought they were doing some sort of weirdo performance art for a moment. LMAO. I was riding a Greyhound home a few years ago. The man across the aisle kept licking his hand, like a big, wet, full palm lick, and rubbing it on his leg. He did this for about an hour straight before I turned to him and asked, "I'm sorry, but why are you doing that?" He said it makes the pain go away. Lick their hand. And I'm not talking about like when a dab of mustard gets on your finger. This was like licking an ice cream cone, but instead it was this long, slow drag up the palm of their hand. It makes the pain go away. A woman got arrested for allegedly injecting strangers with an HIV syringe, but the whole thing was known by everyone who used public transport in my city. People made group chats just to warn each other about the HIV lady. IDK what happened to her, but hopefully she got arrested cause the week was insane and a lot of people were saying they got stung. Yeesh. Tiny elderly Chinese woman was carrying a live chicken by the feet in one hand and a shopping bag in the other. Tried to get on a bus and the driver stopped her. They argued back and forth for a bit and finally she lets out an exasperated growl, breaks the neck of the chicken, stuffs it in the bag and shouts at groceries now. I live in China and this is more Chinese than anything I've seen here. saw an elderly, homeless woman get up from her seat, start yelling and screaming, then start stripping. Unfortunately, I couldn't get off the train to switch cars because she was blocking one end and the conductor was at the other end. Eventually, we get to the next stop where I see police waiting. I switched cars and didn't look back. 16 months until I leave NYC. Not that I'm counting or anything. A lady with a rat in her hoodie and she was whispering to it, "Be quiet. I don't want to get in trouble again." And a guy was behind me with his phone and his beanie playing Screamo really loud in his ear. This was on the one bus. Rural Australia is weird sometimes. A lady with a rat in her hoodie and she was whispering to it, "Be quiet. I don't want to get in trouble again." Somehow a chef's hat would be more appropriate. Not strange but amazing. A girl with no arms below her elbows sat in front of me. She was carrying her lunch in a 7/11 plastic bag. She opened her bag, took out a sandwich, that kind that you get in 7/11, opened it and started eating it. Also she took out a juice box, put the straw in it and started drinking. She enjoyed half her sandwich before she noticed that her stop was coming. She wrapped the sandwich carefully, put the juice box and the sandwich in the plastic bag, stood up and left, all without help from anybody, without making a mess, carefully and gracefully, with no hands, using what nature gave her and with no expression of self-pity or anything like that. She was the master of her life. A little unrelated, but I had a Lyft driver once that didn't have anything below his elbows. He actually drove surprisingly well. I was freaked out when I realized 5 minutes into the ride that he was steering with his half arms. Public masturbation. Getting up repeatedly and shadow fight some hallucination. Crap themself. Loudly sing a song about sea to the tune of Man in the Mirror. Man, that last one sounds like a masterpiece forever lost. About 15 years ago I took a bus and a black woman sat next to me at the very back and asked me what I was reading. I was reading about the War of 1812 and she wanted to know everything about it. I was delighted to explain it to her. After about 10 minutes of pleasant conversation, she suddenly got up and said, "Wait just 1 minute," then goes up to a young couple at the front of the bus who were speaking in Arabic. Out of nowhere she started screaming at them and saying they were responsible for 9/11, that they were terrorists, little pieces of crap, etc. Everyone was shocked. This was in Toronto, and the man started yelling back. The driver strangely did nothing to stop the woman, and the couple got off as soon as they could. Then, with everyone on the bus staring at her, the woman walked back to the seat next to me and tried to resume our conversation about the War of 1812 as if nothing had occurred. I was on a train one afternoon coming home from work on a wet and windy winter's day. As the train pulled into the next train station I could see all the people on the platform with their coats on and standing under their umbrellas as the train went past them, slowing to a stop. As the train stopped I noticed a guy on the platform, about 6 foot tall, wearing a way too small, torn and tattered flannelette shirt. It fit him like a crop top. He had no shirt underneath and the only other thing he was wearing was a sock. A sock that was tied around his unbelievably massive dong. He was just standing there with his arms crossed, shivering in the cold with a sock tied around his giant dong. Either completely oblivious to everyone looking at him in shock or he just didn't give a crap. Watched a guy pick up hair from a plastic bag and eat it. Police entered the train and arrested him, and it turned out to be his ex-girlfriend's hair. Drunk British girl started grinding up on a guy in the tube. He seemed into it until she peed all over him. When he walked off, she didn't have anyone anymore to help her stand up, so she fell down and sat on the ground in her own pee, begging him to come back. AWH drunk Brits. What a beautiful people. A bit like this at home, but more so abroad. This is on the F train in NYC. Naturally, a homeless guy gets on the train at some random stop. Proceeds to sit down like a normal, not so well adjusted homeless dude, talking to himself. As soon as the train starts moving, he drops his pants and takes a crap on the seat. Everyone around him seems to be intentionally looking in every other direction and pretending it didn't happen. Naturally, the homeless dude pulls out a notebook and a Sharpie and writes, "Please do not thank you." No, I did not accidentally a word there. That is exactly what he wrote on the paper. Rips out the page, then places the paper over his fresh crap on the seat. He got off the train at the next stop. I don't even know, dude. He probably meant to say please do not sit. On a similar note, I once saw a homeless guy crap on a piece of paper on a public bench and pick it up and put it in a nearby trash can. Someone doing pull-ups and other workouts using the standing bar holds on the BART. He was an acquaintance of mine, but not during the ride, he wasn't. Traveling on the London Underground every day gives me many stories. Highlights have to probably be the rather polite drunk, homeless man in an Arsenal shirt who told my friend she looked like Cleopatra and then gave her 2 pence. Or a man on the tube last week who came on and started preaching about loving people no matter what religion, race or ethnicity, and then did a tap. I was in Atlanta, commuting via MARTA, and once watched this lady take a bite out of a muffin without taking the paper off of it first. She just chewed right through it and ate the whole thing, paper and all. I saw some post on Reddit about people thinking the paper was edible since they were kids. I was on a minibus in Sierra Leone. They don't have public transport as in a regular bus service, per se. Instead, if you're traveling on your own or with a friend, you can flag down just about anyone with a motorbike and ask if they'll take you to some destination. You arrange the price before you set off. If you're traveling in a large group, you just go to the local petrol station and there'll be a horde of minibuses waiting there to take you somewhere. There's 4 or 5 rows of seats in these things and they cram about 6-7 people per row. Safety isn't a thing there, haha. My friends and I were going somewhere about 3-4 hours away, and after a couple of hours, where we hadn't stopped for anything, all of a sudden, a chicken lets out the loudest cluck I've ever heard. On the other end of the same row I was in, there was a chicken in a cage covered by a sheet or a blanket, and I hadn't seen it and it had kept quiet all that time. Scared the crap out of me, but we all burst out laughing right after. A guy sat in front of me on the university campus bus, had a weird balding spot on the back of his head. While trying to make sense of it, I then watched him grab some hair near the balding spot, pull it out, then eat it. It's a form of OCD called trichotillomania. Pardon my spelling. The uncontrollable compulsion to pull out one's hair and or eat it. It's one of the aspects of OCD no one really talks about. Millions of people have it all over the world. It's a very debilitating disease accompanied with embarrassment and shame. Poor guy. Not really strange, but I saw an MBTA inspector get punched in the face repeatedly by this crazy, homeless black dude on the subway platform. Happened at Andrew Square. If anyone is familiar with this area in Boston, shouldn't be too surprising considering the area. The guy then takes off and tries to hop on the train, but it doesn't take off because the operator saw it happen. He closed the door so he couldn't get out. 2 cops ran by about 2 minutes after it happened, ran up to the car he was in, got the doors opened and arrested him. He was screaming all kinds of crap, saying the cops were racist for arresting him, that this woman deserved it. Am I the only one that giggles whenever I'm on the red line and hear entering? Andrew, I hope you asked him first. I guess it's time for my story. So basically, I was on the train and this clearly drunk guy walks in and has a 2L bottle of apple cider that is half empty. He starts trying to pick up girls while pretty much falling over. Unable to stand still, they all reject him and he grunts. He then turns to me, I was 14 at the time, male, and starts trying to hit on me. I didn't answer and he yells, give me a blow. I get out of there and just start running like heck. Dude on LSD sitting at the front of the bus. He was holding the strings on his jacket and pulling them like he was steering the bus. When the bus was about to turn left, he would pull the right string and vice versa, all the time shouting, look at me, I'm driving this bus. Well, that was all well and good until the bus came to a point where he wanted to go left, but the bus route went right. The guy started freaking out because he had lost control of the bus. We're all gonna die, and started rolling about on the floor and freaking the frick out. The bus driver, the real one, had to boot him off. Give me a lesson in respect. I was about 11, my friend's 12 or 13, older, tired, and poor Indian woman sitting across from us. One of my friends starts making fun of her shoes to us. I'd like to think I was uncomfortable with it, but I know I laughed with my friend. They got off the bus right away. I had to wait a few stops, and that woman talked to me, told me it wasn't right to do what we did and why. I don't remember what I did or said, but the whole incident as described has stuck with me for 40 years. Winnipeg'll surprise you sometimes. Happened yesterday. A guy was talking in the train on the phobia about smuggling cigarettes from Poland or Russia to Germany. I am from Germany. And something else about getting them to Hamburg before singing some random stuff about salt in a city where there is no salt. Just weird. Unscrewed his tongue ring. Put half down on the cloth seat. Wiped the other half off with his hands. Switched to clean the second half. And then put it back in. All I could think about was how they probably never cleaned the seats and how gross it was that he put it back in his mouth after collecting a bunch of germs. I was on a kind of transport that the airport uses to get you from the car park to the actual airport, and some lady was opened up what I assume was a carry-on bag and literally pulled out a baby duck. She then proceeded to grab pieces of bread from somewhere in her bag and fed the duck. Nobody said anything. We all just stared. What the duck? Old dude walks onto the train. Like super old dude. Maybe a kung fu master type of old. He's a regular troublemaker. When we see him, we know that he is going to harass someone. Everyone knows a public commuter like that. So, dude is humming a tune, but as he passes the first person, he says duck and touches the top of their head. Tap. It's gross. He continues in a predictable manner as everyone tries to dodge his awful hobo hand of God. Duck tap. Duck tap. Duck tap. Duck tap. Duck tap. He repeats this mantra as he molests scalps. He touches your head and you feel microbes leave his fingertips and invade your head. So things are getting intense because no one knows what's going to happen when he reaches the back of the train, since there's this big Zulu thug sitting at the end of the train with a "I wish you would" expression on his face, and Bruce Lee's master is in the middle of the coach already. It's like Russian roulette after the trigger's been pulled for the 4th time. Anyway, frail dude is busy ducking all the passengers and time's finally up. Zulu guy, who's probably about 55 and probably fought alongside Mandela in ANC, is confronted by the super ancient dude. It's awkward and intense and a stare off is underway. Now, I already got my frontal lobe blessed by this guy, so I'm waiting for the Zulu guy to get his. Old guy raises his hand like a priest. The word that we anticipate is about to come out. He gets the first syllable out. Goo. And whack. Zulu guy strikes him with the power of Shaka Zulu. Everyone erupts. Zulu guy has his ancestors emerge from thin air and place their hand over Zulu guy's shoulder. The old man falls, stumbles up and leaves the coach, never to be seen on the train again. This is a great story. There was this guy that would have seizures every time he rode the bus. He was told several times to arrange transport in a handicapped van that was better equipped for his needs, but he refused, mostly because that van took forever to get anywhere. So every other day this guy rides the bus, has a seizure, and the bus stops and calls the ambulance, which really inconveniences all the riders. Now this was the only bus that went to a college campus, so it's mostly students trying to be on time for class. Anyway, finals week rolls around and seizure dude goes full seizure again despite being told to stop riding the bus. It's finals week, so everyone is on edge and anxious. They have had it with this dude stopping the bus he's not supposed to ride, so the cops straight up arrested him. Apparently he did a ton of damage to himself by having daily seizures, and we never saw him again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.